and gentlemen. My name is Scriver. I'm a fourth generation mineral dealer. I've been traveling in Russia for almost close to 20 years. I know that I agreed to do a talk on Dalnegorsk. Unfortunately, I looked through my slides back at home, and most of the pieces that I have, I do not have photographs of them. A lot of the pieces that my father and I have sold are on display in many of the people's cases. But I felt that more likely it would be better to look at those things in the cases yourselves and to see them instead of see them on a screen. I thought we could do a little bit of discussion about what is Dalnegorsk. Dalnegorsk is an unbelievable place. It's probably going to become one of the next kind of Sumeb type localities, only not a copper deposit, of course a lead and zinc. I would like to read a passage that Igor Pekov wrote in his book on Dalnegorsk, and it was so elegantly said that I was unable to add really anything to it. It says, Dalnegorsk is a familiar to practically any mineral collector. Dalnegorsk, or former Tetuha, ore district, is located in the Primoria, Russian Far East. It is known far more than 100 years and has a deserved glory. First of all, due to its outstanding collection materials. Coexistence of skarn and various boron-rich hydrothermal mineralization and extensive oxidization zones in the ore bodies are principal factors of mineral varieties in these deposits. Presence of numerous cavities stimulated growth of the outstanding mineral species that we see today. Dalnegorsk is an important source of large, perfect crystals and effective groups of crystals. It is one of the most principal suppliers of collection quality material specimens from Russia. This material is abundant, and the share of the high quality specimens is very significant. The Dalnegorsk deposits produce the world's best specimens of illite. That was up until the Chinese things, of course. But probably in quality, I would have to tend to agree with Igor in this, and I would tend to agree on the illites from Dalnegorsk. One moment, ladies and gentlemen. The world's best specimens of illite, datalite, pyrrhotite, and numerous outstanding specimens of galena, sphalerite, arsenopyrite, optical fluorite, danburite, hedenbergite, and of course manganaxonite. There were multiple findings of chalcopyrite, orichalcite, and adamite in the earlier years, and other minerals. From time to time, such specimens are being found today. Unfortunately, in the last 5 to 7 years, Dalnegorsk has become a very little producer on the world market. This is particularly due to the fact that they are deep into the sulfide zones. Most of the fluorites that we are seeing today are coming out of the sulfide zones. They don't match the fluorites that came from the oxide zones, which were the ones that were, of course, these beautiful cubes that are optical clear, usually on chalcopyrite or on galena. Other types of associations. Dalnegorsk was originally found by Yul Brenner's father. This is from Wikipedia. The settlement of Tetuha, which was founded in 1899, was the founding of a lead and zinc mine by a Swiss immigrant, Julius Brenner. Brenner's son Boris maintained the right to mine on the site until 1931, one of the longest running private enterprises in the Soviet Union. Boris Brenner's son Yul Brenner later became the famous actor in the United States that we all are aware of. In 1930, Tetuha was designated an urban type settlement. The settlement was renamed in 1972 when the Russians basically decided that no longer were they going to have Chinese influence in the names of their cities. Basically what I've done today is I've kind of changed my talk a little bit, and I felt that after talking with a lot of different people at the show here today, that a lot of people had questions about what Dalnegorsk was, what's going on there. And so kind of what I was going to do is let you guys ask me questions. I've been traveling in Russia for 20 years. I have a different standpoint of view on the place. I have it from an American standpoint of view. So maybe you have some different questions that you would like to ask me in regards to the mines in Dalnegorsk or to what's going on in Russia. I'm not sure if a lot of you are aware, I have a confiscated shipment of 4,000 kilos. The Russian government has confiscated this shipment on me and basically are trying to charge me with the theft of national treasure. Most of the experts in Russia do not agree with the government and will not give them a written paper stating that the things that I have in my shipment are national treasure. I do believe that this shipment will come back to me, and I would suspect this is going to be some of the last materials that we are going to see from Dalnegorsk, and it's basically material that I've been buying over the course of the last 7 years. You never know, though. Dalnegorsk is a very interesting place because it can go for years and years and years, nothing, and all of a sudden we have major finds. The last major find that we had at Dalnegorsk, of course, were the pyrrhutites. Keith Proctor has one of his case, which is a very wonderful thing, and some of the largest crystals that I've ever seen from pyrrhutite ever. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Jolene?
How stable are the pyrrhutites?
You know, pyrrhutite in general, from most places of the world that I know, they're not stable. They're not stable. Every pyrrhutite that I've ever seen from, excuse me, let's back that up. The pyrrhutites from Dalnegorsk are stable as long as they've never been put into water or cleaned in any kind of way. The day they came out of the mine and they're sitting on the person's shelf, they will stay brilliant, they will stay not oxidized, but the moment that they go into water, you will see oxidization occurring in the pyrrhutites within a year's time. Any other questions? How about you, Al?
Can you give us a quick survey of the major mines in the Dalnegorsk area?
The major mines, including all producing mines at this time, or all the mines in general?
Well, I'm thinking in terms of the mines and specimens in the same cases.
Okay, what we have in the cases out here, of course, is the Nikolaevsky mine. The Nikolaevsky mine is the #1 producer in the area for galena, sphalerite, and optical fluorite, and fluorite in general. We have the second Sovietsky mine. The second Sovietsky mine is where I believe we have what I call the candy mine. This is where we get all our combinations. We get all our beautiful mangan calcites, we get quartzes, we get all kinds of different combinations in the material. In particular, we have very fine chalcopyrites that come from this area, but small crystals. The Verkhney mine is the most prolific producer of calcite in the area, or not the most prolific producer of calcite. It produces the finest calcites in the area. It also produces the finest datolites. Most people aren't aware that the Verkhney mine produces the fine datolites. Most people assume that it's the Bore quarry, but the finest datolites were first found in what's known as this, the Septembersky mine. The Septembersky mine is actually an extension, the Verkhney mine is actually an extension of the Verkhney mine, and it's connected underground. Of Septembersky, yes. Septembersky was first. Septembersky was closed before I ever got there. I only got to see things that were left over in people's garages that I found, or in a few collections like Mr. Pelopenko's and a few others. The first Sovietsky mine, which was closed almost 8 years before I ever arrived in Russia, is where it produces the finest ilvites of the area. The large crystals up to probably 15 centimeters. The giant angel wing calcites come from the first Septembersky, and also these, maybe you've seen them, the green marmalade fluorites. We call them kind of a very marmaladish green color. They also came out in the first years of my work, and unfortunately there's no further work going on in the first Soviet. Any other questions? Yes?
Hey, I was actually just talking to someone about the blue apatites and the orange calcite that came out with the Lake McCall.
Yes.
Okay, so and I was talking with that person about how there's so many mineral locations around Dalnegorsk that just get lumped in with Dalnegorsk, but not necessarily close to it.
Yes, Kavalerovo is one of those such places. This is where it produces fantastic octahedral fluorites in several different colors. Again, this mine was closed again 10 years before I arrived. It's an open pit, actually. It's not a mine, it's an open pit, and it's full of water. And again, the only thing that we've basically seen from Kavalerovo is the things that were left in people's collections. There's another mine, I think it's called Tetun, which is about 120 kilometers to the northeast of Dalnegorsk, which produces siderites and topazes. There's also a sapphire deposit in the south of Dalnegorsk, probably about 40 kilometers or so to the south, where they find alluvial sapphires up to 2 to 3 carats. And of course, there's the Blue River deposit, which produces the fine prosiums, or the fine green quartzes, and that is about 160 kilometers or so to the south of Dalnegorsk.
Okay, so just an addendum to that. Is there nothing else nearby Dalnegorsk to lump these locations into? So I mean, 160 kilometers is kind of a bit away.
Yes.
There's just nothing else near that?
I think there's other things in between there from several years ago, but this information is not to my
I mean,
knowledge.
just no other towns or anything?
There's tons of towns. They're not really towns, they're all villages. Mostly everything is villages. But
So is there a reason they lump them all together as Dalnegorsk?
no, it's something that we've done here in America,
Okay.
actually. That's something that we've all done here in America. Cavalerovo became Dalnegorsk, and me and my father have been fighting with a lot of people for a long time, but you don't win that war on labels. That's another point. Cavalerovo is the Cavalerovo mining district. It is not the Dalnegorsk mining district, although it is the Primoria Krai and the Primorsky Mountains. Any other questions? Yes, Jeff?
Are the mines in Dalnegorsk privately owned, and what are the obstacles you as a dealer must face in order to acquire good mineral specimens?
The mines are not privately owned. They're owned by a company called Dal Polymetal, which is state. They've tried to privatize these mines for several years. The mafia has gotten involved in these mines, of course. They did a little trick and somehow manipulated the Privatization Act, which the government came and took it back. My obstacles in dealing in Dalnegorsk are extensive. You have to deal with the police, you have to deal with the bosses, you have to deal with the local mafia, you have to deal with the local hooligans, you have to deal with just about everybody. And my approach to that was I basically became friends with everybody. My approach was I had an angle from the street, would sit down with the mafia and drink with them. They like to drink. And once you get to know these people, they're actually not so bad. They're just really trying to survive is all they're trying to do. Of course, they're called a mafia because they're in control of that small village. The village is 34,484 people that live in Dalnegorsk. But the biggest problem that I've ever had, of course, is with the Federal Security Bureau. And they're very influential in this area, in most areas of Russia.
As a government bureau?
Yes, it's the same as our CIA, basically, or our FBI. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What's your favorite mineral or mineral specimen from Dalnegorsk?
I would have to say it's a tie between the optical fluorites and the optical calcites. It's very hard because it'd be kind of like asking what's your favorite mineral specimen from Sumev. And there's actually so many that are good. I mean, the green quartzes that came from Dalnegorsk are exceptional. There's nothing like them in the world. The optical fluorites that came from Dalnegorsk, there's nothing like these at this time. I used to think that there was not going to ever be anything like the Ilvice that came from there, but as we've seen recently, they're very similar. They're coming from China. Any other questions?
I'm dying that there was one thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what's the best score you've ever gotten in Dalnegorsk? What's the best buy you've ever gotten? Because you're a mineral dealer. I know you got something really cheap and you made a killing on it. So now it's time to fess up.
Yes, that's true, I did. It happened about 5 years ago. I got a phone call in the middle of the Tucson show, and one of the miners had a optically clear calcite about 14 inches high by 8 inches wide by about 8 inches deep, sitting on a piece of matrix. It was offered to me for $70,000. My runner thought I was a nut, and I agreed over the phone without seeing it to buy it. But the way the miners usually work in most places of the world, they're going to show this thing off. So I let them show it off, and didn't pick it up for a month and a half. I let them show it off, and of course all the rest of the dealers that saw it beat it up. So when I got there, I asked the miner how much did he want for it. And it's actually not a miner, he was a runner, or somebody in between the miner and me. So I asked him how much he wanted for it, and I told him in Russian that he needs to think very clearly. I think he has a lot of opinions on this piece, and he answered me at $12,000. That piece was taken and later sold in Europe for 120,000 euros. Any other questions? Yes?
When the miners bring up the specimen, how difficult was it for thinking about cases, so many cases where it's instant, you're fired, if not worse, for bringing up specimens? Apparently they were able to
The
bring up
specimens,
quite a number.
understand the question, the specimens are actually a level of corruption, from the miner all the way on up to the big boss. So of course they're using state supplies, state drills, state dynamite, state everything. But the big boss knows what's going on upstairs because he's getting cut somehow or another. What that cut is, I never wanted to put my hand in that pocket, get my hand bit. Any other questions? Yes, Rusty?
Tell us a little bit about traveling to and from and what and how to get out.
Traveling from Moscow to Dalnegorsk is basically like crossing the United States. It's even bigger than, it's like crossing the United States twice. It's 6,484 kilometers, if I remember right in my pad here. It takes 12 hours by plane from Moscow. That's what you'll only get to do Vladivostok. Then you get in a car and you travel by car another 12 hours to travel 550 kilometers to the north to get to Dalnegorsk. It's quite extensive. It's a full 24-hour trip. You get to the other end and you really don't know who you are. But you can deal with those things. In regards to getting material out of the country, the past way, of course, was through channels of corruption or illegal channels, meaning however that material was declared. And probably I don't really know so much because I didn't really ask too much to my brokers or to my lawyers. But heads are turned. And of course that gets a certain aspect of a payoff, I would suspect. Today, Mr. Putin, when he came into presidency, he passed what they call their Natural Resources Act. Their Natural Resources Act was to protect their deposits from theft of gold, platinum, rare metals, and particular caviar, wood, and so on and so forth. And of course our minerals fall into that category. Today you have to go to the Ministry of, you always had to go to the Ministry of Culture. That paper was always an important thing. You had to show them whatever it was you were exporting, and they would give you a paper on that, and you would pay a type of tax. But the biggest problem what we have is within any communist system, nobody wants to take any kind of responsibility. They don't want to give you that paper. So to get that paper today is quite extensive. There's only one company, two people at the moment that are able to do that. That's Misha Yusuf and Igor Mikhailov, the company Axon. What will be the future in exportation of materials from Russia is a very, very good question. I do believe I will get my shipment back, but doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to export. Yes, sir.
Yeah, on a much, much smaller basis, but very relevant to what you say. In a scientific study, this colleague once asked if there was sort of a specimen that would interest me. At a much more modest level, I think there was such a specimen. She could not mail, she's a very honest person, so she said she could not mail it to me. Eventually she was going to a scientific meeting in Germany, and she would bring it there and give it to a colleague, who would forward it to another colleague in Germany, who would then mail it to me. Does that surprise you?
No, that's a very normal thing. My problem is I have a lot of material. You know, if I had just a bag, one bag, it would probably be okay because basically they're souvenir stuff. My biggest trouble is I've been exporting from Russia for 20 years. Some of my largest shipments were up in the areas of 20 tons at a time. My last shipment was 4,000 kilos because Russia is pretty much all mines in the area are closed down. Almost all places in the Soviet Union, with the exception of the Kola Peninsula. The Kola Peninsula was left for my father to travel. He did quite well there. I think that the biggest trouble, and what we all have to look at, is that we're one of the only countries in the world that have the right to work with such things and actually can collect and to sell such things. Most countries, you can't even own or possess, let alone export such things without getting some kind of Ministry of Culture or some kind of Ministry of Geology certification that this particular article is no longer important for the country. When my material is, what had happened? My material was on its way to the plane. The forklift did a quick stop on the tarmac. A banana box flew off the top of my pallet, cracked open, and I got galena and chalcopyrite spilled all over the tarmac. And of course, at 11 o'clock at night with flashlights, they thought they had silver and gold. They called in the head of customs. My shipment went down in the #1 largest airport in Russia. They called in #3 from the customs, and they ripped my shipment apart, and they found I had 1,300 kilos of Yuzhny quartz, which is optical grade quartz, and they thought they were looking at diamonds. They got on the phone and they made a phone call to the Kremlin. They stirred them all up, and they all came, and only to be laughed at in the morning by contraband expert telling them, "I'm sorry guys, no, you don't have diamonds." Be nice, it'd be nice. But my biggest problem is that this is a very large chief who makes quite a bit of money, and he certainly has to be able to save face. To get the customs to say they have a mistake going on here, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the best way that we're going to be able to accomplish this return of our goods is to somehow figure out how to let that man keep face. Keeping face in Russia is as important as in any Asian society. I was exporting the material incorrect. I was exporting the material as materials for construction. Materials for construction materials. Construction materials code is absolutely a normal code in Western Europe, but it is not a normal code in Eastern Europe. Obviously, when they found my chalcopyrite, my galena, and my quartz, this is not material for construction. So this is where my first trouble is. Of course, because of corruption, very simple. What idiot is going to try and export 4 tons of rocks that have never been cleaned? They look horrible. They need to go through acid and air abrasive units, and they need to be trimmed, and so on and so forth. So, in the end, they figured out they didn't have a lot. There's not really a lot they can do with it. It's 3 years now. It's going on close to 4. I think that this was on, if you put in meteorite smuggling ring, I had 2 meteorites in my shipment, which were documented and were certified and legal by the Ministry of Culture. If you put in meteorite smuggling ring, the Russians not this Tucson, but the Tucson before, right in the middle of the Tucson show, released the story. There's 435,000 hits on this in every language in the universe that we have. So you can go in there and read a little bit from a standpoint of view of a Russian standpoint. I think my biggest trouble, I'm kind of what's been called in Russia as the stone vacuum. I work in everything from meteorites to cutting roughs to gemstones to fine minerals. And I just didn't leave a lot of work and a lot of room for others to work. And I think it got a few people angry. And so they created some problems. Any other questions? Yes, Rusty.
Can you tell us a little bit about the conditions in the mining areas throughout the different seasons?
Yes, any particular mining area or in general?
Just all of them. Just how do people live, what the conditions are like being here?
Russians live a lower lifestyle than we do, but they're probably, in a lot of ways, richer people than we are. Family is the strongest thing they have. And of course, each other. Alcohol is a problem, not for everybody. Very depressive atmosphere, meaning the weather. It can be up to minus 35 or 40 in Dalnegorsk with winds of 16, 70 kilometers an hour. Up until 5 years ago, a house, you could buy a house or an apartment, actually not a house, but an apartment, a 4-bedroom apartment in Dalnegorsk for $1,000. Because of new developments and stores opening and privatization, a house today will cost you $15,000. So we do see some growth in that area. When I first went to Dalnegorsk, you paid whatever you could find. A lot of times that was living from a can, whatever it was. It didn't really matter. You ate it. Today, no trouble whatsoever. They eat crab, they eat salmon, they eat squid, they eat bear, they eat elk, wild pig, beef, pork, chicken, of course. Everything is available, but of course for a price. A miner's life is pretty much not any different than what I have seen traveling as a child with my father through many of the mining districts here in the United States. They're pretty much kind of what I call moles. They leave the house at dark, they go into that mine, and they come out at night. A lot of them come out, they've never seen the light of day. A lot of them, when they get their vacation, they don't know how to deal with the light of day, and they spend the whole day drinking. A lot of family issues, of course. Usually the oldest son is in charge of the family while the father is in the mine. And a lot of times, from generation to generation, the sons will follow. In the last few years, though, we're seeing a lot of differences. The miners are making more money. The state is finally paying on time and continually raises the pay for the miners. So we have a lot of miners who are no longer agreeing to send their children into the mines, and they're actually sending them down into Dalnegorsk, or sorry, excuse me, to Vladivostok, or up into Magadan. I've forgotten the city to the north, which is another large city, and they're sending these kids to school for economics, for police work, fire work, engineering questions. In regards to the future of Dalnegorsk, it's a very interesting question because you talk with all the big chiefs. I have quite a good relationship with all the chiefs, with the mayor of the city. Nobody really knows what the intent of the government is in this area. This is a lead zinc mine. Until the prices just recently raised here about 2 years ago, there was no buyer for over 10 years. The garage was full of all the ingots of lead and zinc. Nobody needed them. Just recently, the Koreans have come in and bought all that reserve, and now they start to build it again with no buyer. We've had American interest, we've had German interest, French interest, English interest, South African, Canadian, Korean, Chinese. I can't remember, but there's been others as far as investment into these mines, but for some reason, which I tend to believe that the Russians are to blame, they're not interested in this investments from foreigners. When you're dealing with mining in Russia, and I've done quite a bit of it, it'd be kind of like having a Russian coming over here and digging in your backyard. I don't think we would like it too much. So the last thing they want from us, regardless of our knowledge or our lack of knowledge, they don't really like to be told too much how to dig their natural resources. But I think it just depends on what happens in this world. But I think that the mines in Dalnegorsk, in particular, right now, what is the main ore is being mined in Dalnegorsk. The main ore is being mined in Dalnegorsk. The main interests are rare earths and also bore, yes, from the bore pit. But other than that, Nikolaevsky is working with 250 people inside it. Its peak was 2,500. It happened about 5 years before I came. The second Soviet was 1,200 people inside, and today we have about 120 or 140. The bore, I don't know. Verkney is at its minimum something about 80 people. So in truth and reality, they're not really digging. They're just maintaining, keeping things up and keeping it going. And the state continues to pay for this. At the peak in Nikolaevsky, they made 15 kilometers a tunnel a month. Right now, if they make 500 meters a tunnel a month, that's something big. So I think it's our biggest reason why we don't see a tremendous amount of material on the market from Dalnegorsk. If you look around, it's quite dry, actually, very dry, considering the amount of material that did come. disappeared rather quickly. Any other questions? So, ladies and gentlemen, yes, Alan?
Yeah. Do the climatic conditions present any real challenges for the miners working the mines or recovering and processing the material from there?
The climate's definitely considered, not for receiving materials, but the biggest problem is they drink. It's cold. I never understood it until, you know what, it was minus 50 and I was with my father. We were leaving Dalnegorsk and our driver decided that he wanted to get gas cheaper 60 kilometers down the road. But his gas gauge didn't work. We ran out. Middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning. It was minus 32 or 34 with 30 kilometers an hour winds. It was rather scary because we got to a point, and at that time nobody stopped for nobody because of robberies on the road, because of rapes, who knows what could go on. All kinds of ugly stuff. Not rape, but robberies, in particular robberies and killings. I put $100 in my hand and got a car to stop because basically we were at a point where we were about ready to burn the car to stay warm. Most important, we had 3 small children with us and 5 men. We had a bottle of vodka. That bottle of vodka made all the difference in the world whether or not we were able to stay warm or not stay warm for the next 1 hour. Vodka is not used as an aspect in a lot of mining cities for alcoholism, although it does turn into alcoholism. A lot of it is it helps that inside stay warm. It creates a warmth. You become numb. One time I was traveling in the Polar Urals and I was flying. When you get to the Polar Urals, you go to a small city by the name of Tumen. You fly to another small city, Beryozov, in a small jet. And then from Beryozov, you fly into Sarampol in basically a crop duster. And all it is a metal shell and a wooden seat. And you'd be going through, basically outside it's minus 45, and you'd be flying through this type of weather. Your interior is probably around minus 70. I did it 3 times. And one time I had a guy look at me and ask me, "Are you crazy?" I asked him why. Because I'd always be on the pipes in the airport getting my feet warm for 2 hours. It blew. My hands blew. And I asked him, "Well, what are you talking about? Am I crazy?" "No, I am. Yeah, I'm crazy. I'm all the way up here. I'm crazy, all right. But why? Why are you asking?" He said, "You don't drink when you fly." "No." 3rd time. Don't know what to do. I bought everything that we had in America. Spent thousands of dollars on clothing, on shoes. It didn't work. None of it. So he asked me, "So what are you talking about?" I said, "Well, look, everybody drinks." "Well, you know, it's normal. I'm in Russia." So, no. So they drink so they can stay warm. It's a 45-minute flight. You know, and I thought, well, let's try it. And sure enough, I did try that, and it did work. And after that point on, I never flew into Sarampol, and I never flew out of Sarampol without being half crocked to stay warm. Any other questions?
Or would you do it again? Frankly, before you answer, think hard. Would you do it again?
Without a doubt, Jack.
Okay.
It's what's made me who I am today. It's helped me to understand a tremendous amount about myself. And most importantly, it's helped me to understand a tremendous amount about a perceived enemy that we once had. Most importantly, the most interesting thing that I've ever learned in Russia is these people are probably the most closest thing to an American in their ideology, in their mentality, and in their beliefs, with the exception of there's quite a few of them who don't have belief in God, but most importantly in their belief of their family. When I first went to Russia, I was 60 kilometers away from, the first time I was 60 kilometers away from Moscow, and I started to tremble uncontrollably. My legs started to knock back and forth. I was on a train. And you know, I had to really think about, I thought they were all going to kill me. They were a perceived enemy. And I had a good friend of mine who was a Ukrainian that I was traveling with, and he asked me what was wrong, and I told him, "They're all going to kill me. I'm from America." He said, "No." Of course, I listened to him, didn't believe him. I had been in the country for approximately 7 days and never saw him in my life. I would go to their house. This is a time of rationing. Food was difficult to get, and there would be a table like this spread like I was a king. At first I couldn't, they just want to do business, they just want my money. Sometimes I wouldn't buy anything. It wouldn't matter. Come on, Star, sit down. Sit down with us, family. Have a drink. Have something to eat. And one time I asked my friend why they do that. He said, you know, Star, food's difficult to find. And if they have it, we share it. And it made me really realize a lot about these people. My wife is Russian. My daughter is half Russian, half American. I would never change what I've done in my travels in Russia, to answer your question, Jack. It's been one of the most glorious experiences of my life.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, any other questions? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate very much your time. I appreciate the coming to hear me talk. And you all have a nice day. And I think if you would like to see some nice Dalnegorsk things, take a good look in the cases out there. There's a lot of old friends. Thank you very much.
That was awesome.